In the previous lesson, we saw how we can do color correction in NATRON and also like color alteration, and also how we can use the wipe tool. Really easy to compare the original image with the other that we modified. So we saw that we can use different nodes, and we can also pass through different nodes sequentially. We can disable with the D key of the keyboard. We can disable and enable a node, so we can like stack different adjustment layers one on top of the other, and we can see which one works the best. And again, we can use the wipe to compare it with the original. Now we are going to talk about other nodes in this other lesson, and we're gonna start again with the NATRON samples, just to show you again a quick, really interesting source that you can use. You can find those by searching NATRON samples, going into SourceForge in the first results, and then download and extract all these zipped files. Now I've already extracted them, and I'm gonna start with this one here, which is Baymax, and double click. Here we have the robot folder where there are all the sources, and this is the final result, the final video. So I'm gonna double click on the NATRON file, and you can see this, the robot source here is just a sequence of frames that probably we will find inside the NATRON file. So we're gonna start with this sample. Let's quickly have a look also to this other one. And now the first thing we can see is this circle in the middle. Now that's a transforming node, a transforming gizmo from a transform node, and that's the read right there. So everything starts with a simple sequence, with a simple footage of frames of the robot moving, and then we have all these different like secondary nodes. And you see the most frequent node is merge, because every time we add something new, we need to merge with the previous one. So this is the background here, and then it's processed, and then it's passed through a merge node. Now, every time that we do something different, we can use a different backdrop, which is this like colorful rectangles that you see around. And that's the end of the path of the various nodes. Now you can see here that if we click on this and move it around, this is affecting the light that is coming from that image, which probably is like a PNG or something, but we will discover more about these like advanced effects later on. But what we want to focus on in this video is transforming, and also how we can group nodes together, because the more groups we use, the more the things are going to get confused, so you may want to organize them a little bit better. Now if we right click on this, we can go in the edit, and we can group the selection from here. We can also use find. So let's see, I want to see how many merge. Now you can see there are 16 merge in this composition, and also transform. Let's type transform, and we have only 3 transforms right here. So if I click next, I can go and transform all these elements in the scene one by one. But I don't want to work with this. This is just to show you a professional example, an advanced example. Just want to make some other demonstration. If I extract the node, that's gonna bring it out of its sequence and out of the backdrop here. So the backdrop can be considered kind of as a group visually, because it's gonna group things together visually, and it's gonna make you move them together. And of course I can remove it just like any other node. Now if I select these 3, I can press L if I want to bring them all vertical, or if I want to maintain the structure, just gonna keep it as it is. Now if I want to create a visual group, I can use a backdrop, not a group. So backdrop is just going to create like a frame around the selected nodes, and you can hold the shift key if you want to select multiple entities. And here you have a label, so I can type here something like also a really long text if I want. I'm just going to type here like custom backdrop grouping, so meaning that I'm grouping with this, and you can see the text is like hidden a little bit, So I can make this a little bit larger, and I can rearrange the nodes that are inside this group. And I can also call this, give another name, give another label. So I'm gonna name, actually title, I'm gonna call this custom backdrop. And there you go. So you have customized this a little bit. Now you can also change the color of a backdrop if you want to customize it even more. And let me just go back here. And again, I want to extract those, keep them outside of this group again. So what I'm going to do is select them and then extract, only extract it once. I'm just going to repeat the operation. Of course, remember the shortcut keys if you want to be quicker. In this case, it's Control Shift X to extract. Now that's now empty again. And I'm going to delete it with the delete key or the backspace key. Now I have these three again isolated. And another thing I can do is select those and go back here on the toolbar, create a group. Now I am inside the group one. So we can consider the group to be like a sub graph editor, like a smaller container inside the bigger container, which is the node graph. So if you go back to the node graph, you can see all we did is creating here a link from that source to the group that we created. Now, if I do Control X, I can cut the selected node, and I want to paste them in here inside the group. So Control V. So basically, you can treat a group just like another editor. So like an editor inside the editor. So I can press Tab here and add a read. So let's open up an image in here, or I can just put a series of operation group together. Now, if you select the nodes, the input, the output, you can customize them. So everything is going to run through not each single node, but run through the group, which is not going to be visible. If you want to visualize what's inside the group, you can double click. You can also type here a label. So let's call this like custom sub graph, maybe. And then also you can give a name. So I can call this, whatever I'm doing. I can also activate a preview of this group is doing, just like any other node. So I can just, I'm gonna type custom group. I can change the color of this just like I can do in the backdrop. And then I have this button. If I click, I'm gonna get inside the group real quick. So grouping and using groups and backdrops is just a way to manage, organize, and simplify in a way the work in a complex project. Now, if let me show you here. If I go on dust and hair in this template file, in sample files, you can see we have a group. So if I want to see what's inside there, I can double click to see it on the top and then click on the little icon with the little eye. So you can see that this is basically a color correction groups, because the input goes inside this grade and then invert, and it's just doing some color correction. I can press D to disable one of these nodes or both, so we can see what's happening without this input. And then the output is going to bring everything back to the main graph editor. Now I'm going to show you another sample, which is the new sample file. So I'm going to show you that this is the exported format is an HTML, and that's the final result. It's an SVG. Now, SVG means scalable vector graphics. So this is essentially vector graphics that has been processed inside NATRON. And the first thing I see here is this gizmo. So it means we have movement, transformation, and also we have animation. If I scroll in the timeline, you can see it's already rendering out, but we can see it's an animated file. It's not a static SVG. So you can create a static SVG using other software like Illustrator or Inkscape, and then you can bring it in, you can modify it, you can transform it, and you can even animate it. So we're going to talk about animation later. Just want to focus on transformation in this lesson right here. And so we have keyframes in there. And if I go in the curve editor, I can see also the curves, which is another way you can animate using curves, be more detail in the animation and the transformations. And also the dope sheet is going to show you all the different keyframes you're using in a kind of a table fashion with columns and rows. So you can see all the action you're doing.